How's it going, everyone? This is Adam from Slurv, Ship My Money on DraftKings, and I'm going to be breaking down the pitching slate for you for the evening slate on May 19th. I'm going to start with a couple cash plays that I like, and then move into some GPP plays that I think have more upside and more risk. On this slate for cash, I'm expecting to pay up for pitching. There's not a lot of safety, I don't think, in the cheaper options. And at least early, looking at the hitters, I don't really see a lot of hitting that I feel like I'm going to have to pay up for. So I'm just going to start at the top. Chris Sale is in a really good spot, going up against a Houston team who has some power, obviously, but they strike out about 25% of the time against left-handed pitching this season. And Sale is, one of the best pitchers in the game, but he's not my favorite play today, just because there are some peripheral stats that make it seem like he isn't as good as he has been so far this year. And on top of that, he's been pitching to contact. That was a point of emphasis coming into the season, and he's been doing it. And so he just doesn't try to strike people out as much anymore. And priced at $13,800 on DraftKings, $12,100 on FanDuel, I think that's a little high, given that he's trying to pitch to contact more. The one thing in his favor is that the Astros make it kind of hard to pitch to contact because they swing and miss so much. They have the second highest swinging strike rate in the majors, second lowest contact rate on pitches in the strike zone, and the fifth lowest. They actually have the fifth lowest chase rate. So Sale he may still pick up a good amount of strikeouts here, just because he's going to be throwing the ball in the zone, and the Astros are just going to swing and miss. But I think those prices are still just too high for cash. But if you do, have money left over, I think Sale does have a really nice floor in this matchup. Moving down a little bit to probably my favorite of the high-priced pitchers is Steven Strasburg at $12,900 on DraftKings, $10,600 on FanDuel. He's got a matchup with the Mets that looks, scary, because the Mets are a good hitting team. So, there is, risk because the Mets can hit. But Strasburg's just been awesome this year. 29.8% strikeout rate, 11.9% swinging strike rate with a 2.88 xFIP. On top of that, the Mets have a very lefty-heavy lineup. And going back to the beginning of last season, Strasburg has struck out 29.7% of lefties he's faced. So, the split, facing all the lefties doesn't lower his upside. It doesn't really lower his floor. The Mets this season, they hit well. They have a 329 WOBA, 106 WRC plus against right-handed pitching, but they have struck out 22% of the time. So, that's just a really nice floor for Strasburg. He might give up a couple of runs and not throw, a shutout, but the strikeouts are definitely there for him to get against that Mets lineup, and that gives him a nice floor at, $900 lower than Sale on DraftKings and $1,500 lower than him on FanDuel. Moving down a little bit, I like Jeff Samardzija as a second pitcher in cash. Early at least, my game plan is probably to go with Strasburg and Samardzija, and then find some value bats, since I don't see a lot of bats that I'm gonna probably pay up for tomorrow in cash. Samardzija is a guy who, throughout his career, he's shown a lot of potential, but he's been kind of inconsistent. But so far this year, he's got a 21% strikeout rate, 10% swinging strike rate, and a 3.45 xFIP. He's looked pretty good for the Giants so far. He's facing a Padres team who's just, really bad hitting ball club against righties. 25.2% strikeout rate, 277 WOBA, 71 WRC plus. There's a lot of strikeouts in that lineup for Samardzija, and just a lot of guys who aren't going to hit the ball really well. So he's in a spot to, have a nice floor and a nice little ceiling on him also. He is priced up, especially on DraftKings, at $11,800, but I just think that the floor he has against the Padres, not to mention he should be popular since he's going against the Padres, so it gives you a block also in cash. So, I like those guys. I think, if you do want to go down at cash, there's guys that are in good matchups, that I like. I don't think they're quite as safe, but you have John Gray going against the Cardinals at $8,500 on DraftKings. The Cardinals hit really well against righties, but Gray's looked really good this year. Waka, I think, is an interesting play. He's in cash. I don't really like it just because he doesn't have much strikeout upside, so his floor is kind of low. Like, facing a team that theoretically can hit, like they have good hitters. But he is priced really low on DraftKings at 7,200, and the Rockies do struggle outside of Coors Field. So, in a really tight spot, if you just love your hitters and you need to go cheaper at pitcher, I think you could do worse than Michael Wacha at 7,200 on DraftKings. Moving into my GPP plays, I guess I'll start with Sale again. I was originally thinking I just wouldn't really have him at all at these prices, but especially on FanDuel, I am interested in him. I think his ownership will be not high on DraftKings, but higher since you do have to roster 2 pitchers, and he's the top price guy on the board. There's just more opportunity for people to get him since you need 2 pitchers. But on FanDuel, where he's $1,500 more than the second most expensive pitcher, who's Strasburg, I could see him being really low owned. And that's a spot where, it's not ideal. Like, you can definitely get the same ceiling, maybe even a higher ceiling, lower, for less money. But he could easily be the best pitcher on the slate, tomorrow. If you're looking at something where, let's say, Sale is 10% owned and Strasburg is 20% owned, just for round numbers, Sale, if twice as many teams have Strasburg, there's definitely an argument to play Sale there, because he's going to beat Strasburg, I would think more than, 30% of the time. But so I think you can definitely pay up for Sale there. I like Strasburg. I think he's got a really high ceiling. I probably will stay away from Samardzija in GPPs. For one, since he's facing the Padres, I do expect him to be higher owned than I would like. He's a guy, he's been good lately, but throughout his career, he's been inconsistent. And he's a guy that I like to play when nobody's going to play him, and I like to avoid when he's going to be chalky. And I assume he'll be chalky against the Padres. So he's someone I would rather just, avoid, especially because, especially like on DraftKings and even, on FanDuel also, he's one of the more expensive pitchers. And he's got, a really good matchup with the Padres, but I definitely think his ceiling is lower than Strasburg's is, and probably even than Sale's is. Just because, Strasburg is a better pitcher and has better strikeout stuff. Sale, isn't trying to strike people out as much, but is a much better pitcher than Samardzija. And, they're both in pretty good matchups as far as strikeout upside goes. So, for those reasons, I'm planning on not having Samardzija in GPPs. Kind of similar to how I didn't have Cueto last night. Moving down, I really like John Gray going against the Cardinals. He's been really good this year, especially outside of Coors Field. So far, he's got a 30% strikeout rate with a 12% swinging strike rate. Going back to last season against right-handed batters, he's got a 24.3% strikeout rate with a 2.9 xFIP and a 1.82 ground ball to fly ball ratio. And he's facing the Cardinals team who, they've been hitting right-handed pitching really well, but they do have a lot of right-handed bats in that lineup. And I expect Gray to, have a nice outing in St. Louis. He gets the ballpark boost away from Coors Field. Moving down a little bit more so on FanDuel, I have some interest in Irvin Santana tomorrow. That's painful for me to even say, but he has been pretty good this year. He's 7,600. Well, I take that back. He's had some nice strikeout stuff this year. He's 7,600 on DraftKings, which is a little high for me. But he's 6,600 on FanDuel, and he has so far this season struck out 20.8% of batters he's faced. Going back to last season, he has a 23% strikeout rate against right-handed batters. And, the Blue Jays, most of their power bats are right-handed. So far this season against right-handed pitching, they've struck out almost 24% of the time with a 95 WRC+. And the game's being played in Minnesota, which, is better for Santana than the Rogers Center would be. So this is a spot where I don't think anybody's going to be on Santana. And, I would think people are actually going to be stacking the Blue Jays too, to an extent, since Santana is probably perceived to be one of the weaker pitchers on the board, and the Blue Jays have one of the higher run totals tomorrow. So, you can get him at low ownership and leverage against those Blue Jays stacks, because if he has a good game, you're just going to pass the Blue Jays stacks as well as, all the people that don't have him. So that's a risky spot that could definitely go bad, but, if you are trying to get some bats, he's a guy that I don't mind paying down for, and hoping he gets like a strikeout an inning or so and goes 6 or 7 innings. And then another risky play that I think does have some upside is Tim Adelman going against the Indians. The game's being played in Cincinnati, which isn't ideal. It's a pretty good hitter's park. So far this year, he's got a 1.19 ground ball to fly ball ratio, so he's not a heavy ground ball pitcher, which isn't ideal either. But so far this year, he only has a 19% strikeout rate, but he's got a 10.2% swinging strike rate. So if he keeps up that swinging strike rate, I do expect his overall strikeout rate to go up a little bit. And he's facing an Indians team who hits righties well. They have a 107 WRC+, but they've also struck out 22% of the time against righties. So, I think the upside is there, and he's priced really, really low. 5,600 on DraftKings, 5,900 on FanDuel. That's a spot where, it's not necessarily a high probability play. Like, I would definitely put the odds of him having a good game lower than, that the Indians have a good game against him. But it's a play that if he does have a good game and he gets some strikeouts in a spot where he definitely could, then you are in a really nice spot with a pitcher under 6K, and pretty much all the money to spend on bats, plus an ace as your second pitcher if you're on DraftKings. So I think that's a spot that you could go to in GPPs if you don't mind the risk there. Moving into bats that I want to use, the Reds I like a lot. They're in Cincinnati. They're going up against Josh Tomlin, who so far this season has given up 37% hard contact, and he's a fly ball pitcher. Against righties, he gives up even more hard contact and even more fly balls. Like his ground ball to fly ball ratio against right-handed pitching is .64, and the Reds, have some righties that can hit. They have Suarez, they have Cozart, they have Phillips, and then their lefties. It's not like he's great against lefties either, and their lefties are really good hitters, especially Votto. So that's a spot where I think you can really pick on Josh Tomlin. And on the other side of that, if I'll probably have some Adelman lineups, and I'll probably have some Indian stacks against him. Taking the visiting team in a really good hitter's park like Cincinnati is always a good play, especially when they're facing a guy who he doesn't have a lot of experience, and he definitely can get hit pretty hard. So that's the spot where I'll probably just play both sides of it and hope that one of them works out well. The Pirates going against Foltynewicz, or however you pronounce the pitcher for Atlanta's name. Vegas likes them more than I do, I think, but I think they're in play. Vegas right now is projecting them for 4.5 runs. The Pirates. I don't dislike him that much, but going back to last year, he does have pretty high, like mid to high 4 xFIP against righties and lefties. Righties being the more important one in this matchup since the Pirates, run so many righties out. So, and he's a fly ball pitcher. So, they're definitely in play. I just don't really like stacking the Pirates that much in Pittsburgh because it just limits their home run upside so much. So that's a spot that I don't know how much exposure I'll have, but they're definitely in play, and I guess I like them more than some of the other options. Maybe my favorite stack right now, though, is the Dodgers going against Jhoulys Chacin of the Angels. He'd been pretty decent this season, but he struggles with lefties. Going back to last season, he gives up 41% hard contact to left-handed batters. Now he does have 50% ground ball rate against lefties, which obviously is good, but the Dodgers just have a lot of power, lefty power in that lineup with Seager, Peterson, Grandal. Utley I wouldn't qualify as power, but he's a decent lefty hitter. Gonzalez, if you're going to run if the Angels are going to put someone out there that's going to give up over 40% hard contact to those guys, I definitely don't mind taking my chances with those Dodgers hitters, especially on a slate where I don't see a lot of teams that I feel like I have to stack. So that's what I'm thinking for right now. Definitely stop into the Slurve chat, around lock or before, and get our ideas as lineups are coming out and we have more information. Good luck tonight, guys.